Hello, I'm Joe Haddow, and this is our series of interviews with the Theakston Old Peculier Crime Novel of the Year Award longlistees, produced and curated by Harrogate International Festivals in partnership with Theakston Old Peculier, WHSmiths and the Express. And it's great to have you with us. Today I'm joined by an international best-selling author whose sporting career took off at age 11. He turned down a professional rugby contract to study theatre and TV in Winchester, where he set up a successful theatre company. He now runs his own fitness and nutrition company, as well as being the author of the January David series. Here to talk about his latest novel, Nothing Important Happened Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Will Carver. Hello.
Hello. All right.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Where do we find you in this sort of resplendent light room?
Where am I? I am in my lounge in the, it's top floor flat. We like to call it the penthouse, but but you know, there's only a few rooms. So yeah, it's the best light I could find.
How is lockdown treating you at the moment?
It is awful from about 9 o'clock till 3 o'clock, where I am the home teaching guy. That is not fun. I do not care what people are putting on social media about how fun it is and all the time they get to spend with their kids. It is awful. That is how I find it. So after that, it cools down a bit. I mean, it can't get much worse. Obviously, I run a lot of fitness classes as well. So I'm doing 16 of those a week, which I try to fit in around teaching the kids and writing the next book.
Wow.
So it's pretty full on. But, you know, for a writer, I don't think it's such a bad thing to be away from people. We quite like that, I think. We like to be locked in a shed at the bottom of the garden or whatever. So that side of it is okay.
So you're doing your sort of own version of a Joe Wicks lesson, are you?
Oh, Joe Wicks. Don't get me started on Joe Wicks. Yes, it's slightly different in that I'm actually there. So we do it on Zoom. It's not pre-recorded. So, and I don't have 800,000 people. I might have like 20, but yeah.
That's a start, isn't it? That's a good start.
I'm into it. Yeah.
But enough of this fitness malarkey. Let's get into talking about books and quite specifically about your book, which has been longlisted, and congratulations for that. And the very opening of this novel is quite striking, and it certainly stayed with me, the event in it. And for those who haven't read it yet, perhaps you could just tell us what the book's about and what happens at the beginning.
Okay. So the book opens with 9 people who've never met each other. They've never spoken to each other before. They all arrive at Chelsea Bridge in London at the same time. They sit down, they don't talk, they take a rope out of a bag, tie it around their neck, tie it around the steel girder behind, and at the same time, they run forward and leap to their death. We find out that morning, each one of them received a letter in the post. Only had 4 letters on it, 4 words even. Nothing important happened today. And that was their trigger to let them know that they should go to the bridge and do that. Eventually, we find out that they are part of a suicide cult called the People of Choice, where the members don't know they're a member until it's too late.
Mm. Now, I was really gripped by this book, and part of that reason is because of that first event, which just, I was not expecting, and I'm sure a lot of other readers weren't either. And I'm going to say something which I hope, and I'm saying it in a very positive way, and I hope you take it that way. The novel felt to me very experimental, a sort of like mixture of styles, and as if you were slightly playing with the genre a bit. Would you agree with that?
I would, yes. I mean,
okay, good.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm very lucky to write and be published by Arenda Books. I do get a certain amount of freedom to express myself and challenge what the genre expects. which I did in the last book, Good Samaritans, and I did even more in this one. In the last one I did it, and people weren't that put off. So I was like, well, how far can I take it then? So yes, I do play with the style, and obviously there's spliced in between the story, there's this kind of instruction manual on how to set up your own very successful cult. Very young characters, excellent fun to write. But still in that crime setting, but just crime plus a bit of weird,
Crime plus a bit weird, yeah. I'd stick that on the cover, actually. That's quite a nice... I was talking with another longlistee, Will Dean, and talking about his book, and he said, his is very much like a sort of... he was saying a Twin Peaks with a criminal edge to it, because it's that weird and wonderful mix. And I think that's what's so great about the crime genre and about this long list, actually, is, there's crime as we know it, which is there's a murder and maybe a detective or someone solves it, but there's just so much more to it now, and authors are really experimenting like you, and they're sort of pushing the boundaries a bit, and I think that's really healthy.
Yes, I agree. There does seem to be more and more of it, and especially on this list, it's really great to see the writers who are doing that. They're obviously the stalwarts of the genre, that can produce great detective stories over and over. But Will Dean again. I mean, you're right. It is like Twin Peaks, that seedy underbelly of what seems to be a nice town. Yes, and myself, Helen Fitzgerald as well. Just, I mean, so much comedy in her crime novels as well, and real heart. I think we need it. You need to push things forward. It can't, otherwise it dies, doesn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Now, I mentioned your previous series of books, which feature D.I. January David. And in this novel, we see the return of Detective Inspector Pace, who featured in the previous book, Good Samaritans. Do you enjoy writing sort of returning protagonists? Do you enjoy that series of books?
I did. When I wrote the January David series, I did enjoy writing that series because you get to know them. I mean, he really was the protagonist. He was in the center of it all, the thick of it. Whereas Pace, in Good Samaritans, I think he has about 6 lines, and he's kind of just a show on the news items. And in this, his story isn't really part of the main story. Again, he's undergoing therapy from the last case, and his story runs alongside the suicide cult story, eventually becoming intertwined. So I am enjoying it because it's a loose series. I mean, these books can stand alone, but he just pops up in them. So it isn't like, I wouldn't say they were Detective Sergeant Pace books, but it does make a series, yes, because he's in them.
No, I probably wouldn't either. And yet, by the mere fact that the same character who is a detective has cropped up twice, it sort of lends itself towards a series. But interestingly, yeah, what you said about them being standalone as well. You don't need to have read the previous one, or you could probably jump into whatever the next one's going to be, because they sort of make sense without the backstory of that character. But if you have read them, then I suppose you might just get a tiny little bit more out of them because Yes,
yeah, exactly. It's you reward the readers that started at the beginning. Yes,
Yeah. I want to talk about this fabulous list. Then you've already mentioned it, and the sort of breadth of amazing talent on it, and the variety of books that are on it. Have you had a chance to read many of your other long listees, and do you have a favourite or one that sticks out for you?
I have. I've read obviously quite a few of the authors, not necessarily the books on this list. As I mentioned before, Will Dean. I read the first book in this series, and I really enjoyed that. I'm a big Twin Peaks fan, so I'm just rewatching it at the moment.
Are you?
Yeah.
I was thinking about rewatching it.
So I started watching it the other day, and then I'm part of a Facebook group, a Twin Peaks thing, and it said it was like the 25-year anniversary, and I just started watching it that day. I mean,
well, there you go. It was this. There must have been something. We must have subconsciously known that was the case.
Yeah. So, yes, but I haven't read the new one, although I have downloaded it onto my Kindle. Obviously, I think Helen Fitzgerald's books are great. She's a stable mate of mine. But I think Worst Case Scenario was just a wonderful book. I mean, short and snappy. Yes, it is crime, but there's so much more to it. And again, like you said, doing something different. This menopausal woman is, ready to pop, but also there's so much heart there. It's a character you can really sink your teeth into, I guess. But I love that, and I love the comedy element of that. So I think those are the two.
Yeah,
I think I'd go with.
It's brave, I think, to try and weave comedy into crime. And when talking to Helen, she said that it wasn't a sort of something that she had chosen to do straight away. It just sort of came out, and I think that's the case for other authors on that list as well, who might be described as having a sort of dark humour to their comedy. But when it works, it really does work, doesn't it? Yeah,
well, indeed. Also, she's very funny in real life as well. So it does come through. But I think you do need it. That those lighter moments can make the darker moments even more powerful. And I certainly tried to do it in the last book. This book, it was harder. It's very dark, this book. So the things that I thought were light are still actually quite dark. They're just a slightly lighter black.
Returning to this prize then, and it's 18 books, you're one of them. How did it feel when you heard that you were on this long list for the biggest award for crime fiction in the country?
I was shocked because look at the names on there. You've got Lee Child, Val McDermott, big writers that have been around, and they produce these amazing series. And I tend to think of my book as a little book. It always shocks me that when I get a review in the paper or I get a message saying someone liked it. I get quite a lot of people messaging me to say they don't like it. I don't mind those. So yeah, I was shocked, but really pleased. It's the most prestigious prize for crime writing. So to be in the 18, 18 sounds like a big number, but I'll take it. If they did a top 250 and I was in it, I'd be chuffed.
I just wanted to pick up on something you mentioned earlier, which we talked about at the very beginning of the book, and the fact that there's a cult, and this theme runs through the whole of the novel. And I wondered if this was just something that came to you, or was there a sort of fascination in cults that you wanted to explore?
Well, yeah, I think if you're not fascinated by cults, then what's wrong with you? So, yes, I think I'd always had this fascination with cult leaders. For my first 3 books, I really looked into Charles Manson, but cult members as well. And this idea came to me. I was watching like a 3-hour documentary on Jonestown, the Jonestown massacre, and there was a survivor who said that the quotes in the front of the book, it says something like, nobody joins a cult. Nobody wants to join something that's going to hurt them. They join like with a group of people who they like and, get on with. And that kind of just flipped my brain. I thought, oh, of course. No one goes, oh, you know what? All these people are going to kill themselves off a bridge. Let's join that group. It's not like joining a book club. So I just wanted to take that as far as I could. And the fact that these people join a group that ends up hurting them and becomes a cult what if they were in a cult and it was a suicide cult and they had no idea? They get this letter through the post, they go somewhere and they die, and they never knew they were part of this cult. And then, you know, the mystery behind that, and the police have no idea how to do it, because as soon as they get the letter, they destroy it. There's no evidence. You can't see who the leader is. And I just thought, that would be really good fun to play with. So yeah, that's where it came about.
Yeah, cult leaders is an interesting thing, isn't it? I recently watched, as I suppose many people have done, especially during this lockdown period, I watched The Tiger King on Netflix. And although that's about, you know, three very different individuals and certain stories and that were tied up with them and everything, but there is certain elements of them that are sort of cultish, and certainly with regard to one of them, I can't remember his name now, Doc something, he struck me as a sort of cult leader, one of these figures that you're describing.
Yes, they do have a very kind of specific set of traits that I find applicable elsewhere. So I wrote a piece recently about how in 2004 I joined a cult, which we now know as Facebook. Essentially, if you look through the book, it goes through what makes a good cult leader. You know, Zuckerberg, Facebook, it all points towards being a cult. And the thing about cults is it's not a cult until someone on the outside calls it a cult. You know, it's a book club, it's Zoom quizzes or whatever, you know, it's, you know, until someone outside says they're living in a commune, not a community. It's not a cult. So, you know, I'm just calling out social media, you know.
I think fair enough. Yeah. I try to call it out at any possible opportunity, to be honest. And finally, before we let you go, just tell us, what does the Theakston Old Peculier Crime Novel of the Year award mean to you?
Do you know, when I first got into this writing gig, I went to the Harrogate Crime Festival, and it was just the most amazing experience. And there are so many of these festivals around, and there are some great ones, and some of them are getting better. But this is always the one. You know, people wait for it. People book up months, the day they go home, hanging on that train. They're ready to book for next year. So it's the one. It's the one you want to be a part of, and you know, to be on this list for this award. Well, it's amazing. Yeah, it's the one.
It's the one, quite right. And the book we're talking about is Nothing Important Happened Today. It's published, as we said, by Arenda Books, and it's out now, available from WHSmiths. So if you haven't read it yet and you liked what Will was saying, then why not treat yourself to a copy? And remember that you get to vote for this shortlist. So if you'd like to see Will on that list, head over to Harrogate Theakston Crime Award.com and you can place your vote there. Will, it's been lovely chatting. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Cheers.